everyone, I'm Kristen and I'm the curator here at IVDM. As the curator, I'm responsible with managing and overseeing our vast collections that you see here. As part of that task, I record, store, and preserve artifacts and objects, as well as organize new exhibits. So another part of my job here at IVDM is participating in the research of our artifacts. Artifacts are surviving materials from an earlier time that are usually found by archaeologists and archaeological dig sites. However, the exact use and origin of the artifacts can be difficult to determine accurately. The research I perform helps to elaborate on the identity of these artifacts. So for me, curation is a method, it's an act, and it's a system of actively preserving our past for all future generations. Curation ensures artifacts remain safe and secure for the public to access and learn about the rich and diverse history of Imperial Valley. Proper storage is a vital component in the curation process. It is important because it increases the longevity of our artifacts. Naturally occurring substances will degrade over time, but by maintaining appropriate storage standards, including, but not limited to, temperature and humidity levels, as well as acid-free boxes, ensures these artifacts remain longer for us to observe, learn from, and enjoy. To be a federally recognized institution means that IVDM is responsible for upholding the highest professional museum, curation, and archival standards. Our designation as a federal repository, the only one in the county, speaks to the high standard of care IVDM, even as a small museum, provides for the artifacts of our community. IVDM ensures the preservation not only of the artifacts themselves, but also the history of Imperial Valley. So we are standing in the collection storage area here at IVDM, and this is where the magic happens. With our new storage facility, we've opened up opportunities to archaeologists and researchers to be able to come in and study these artifacts. Guests to our museum can see a variety of artifacts on display. These represent only 1% of the total collections at IVDM. The most important part of having the storage facility is the ability to preserve these artifacts. We take delicate care and follow procedures to make sure these pieces are preserved and able to tell the history of the Kumeyaay forever. These aren't just some rocks and old pots. These artifacts hold insight to the rich history of the Kumeyaay and how everyday life looked for them. Each object tells a story from how it was made, how it was used, and why, and even who it belonged to. Let's look at a few examples. So here I have an assortment of artifacts that belong to the Kumeyaay people. Some of them include projectile points, arrow shaft straighteners, arrows, yucca fibers, agave sandals, agave stick, and rabbit stick. These artifacts, in addition to many other facts we have in our collections, were actually used for a variety of purposes, and they include hunting, gathering, cooking, farming, and as well as cultural ceremonies. So analysis of artifacts can be a complicated and delicate process. There are observational methods as well as more invasive methods such as chemical testing. And the results of these tests help share with us a great deal about the objects that we study here at IVDM. Each has its pros and cons. The method of macroscopic observation is a time-efficient process that can be easily applied to large collections of materials, but often only provides information about what is naturally visible about an object. When more detailed information on the inner composition of pottery is needed, for instance, chemical and mineral testing is available. Unfortunately, the more complex the method of analysis, the more complicated it becomes to interpret the data. Additionally, many of the more complex chemical and microscopic types of analysis are destructive to the sample being tested and can be fairly expensive. These two factors are key to limiting its widespread use in analysis. At IVDM, we practice passive and observational techniques so that we do not damage, and we preserve the outstanding collection of the ceramics we have. So analysis is just one small part of the bigger picture, but there is also a really important cultural aspect, the importance of which cannot be overstated. We are so grateful to still have the Kumeyaay people present to speak on the significance of these objects today. Ethnography is the scientific description of the customs of individual peoples and cultures. For millennia, our world has been filled with numerous distinct native people, each of which had unique tools and values. It is really important to understand that the Kumeyaay culture is alive and actively practiced. Although we have artifacts from previous generations, the Kumeyaay people continue to use these tools and celebrate their culture. At IVDM, we act as stewards of this rich and diverse history. So I've collected a few artifacts that you should find interesting. The first piece I'm going to share with you today may look simple in design, but it is actually very good at what it does. So here we have a digging stick, and it was used for, well, you can guess, digging. The agave roasts were an important ceremony for the Kumeyaay, and the digging stick was crucial in this process. Speaking more about this artifact is Stan Rodriguez.
Digging stick, traditionally it's a piece of oak, almost about half as, about 3/4 as tall as me, and put the end in the fire until it gets toasty and scrape into, it's like a flathead, like a screwdriver, flathead. And when we put it in the fire, it makes it hard. And that way, if you ever try to pound a stick onto something, if it's not been hardened, it'll just splinter up. But when it's been fire hardened, it'll take a lot of beating, especially oak. It's a dense wood.
So the Kumeyaay people were hunter-gatherers and primarily lived off of the plants that were in the area. But 1/4 to 1/3 of their diet was meat, and they needed the right tools for the job. The ability to analyze these tools not only connects us to the people they belong to, but to the places they resided in, and the type of activities the Kumeyaay were involved with.
The word for arrow is epal. To make arrows, we use various things. We can either use the carrizo, cane, and what we do with this is we clean it off. Now, one of the things that we want to do after we clean it off is we're going to test to see how straight it is. Now, almost all the wood that we get has somewhat of a bend. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to straighten it. So what we have is we have an arrow straightener here. And arrow straighteners are made of various stones or made out of clay. So this is an arrow straightener made out of clay. So what I would do is after I clean this off, then I want to measure it right about here. That's about how long I want it. So every person will measure it according to their own length. Every person's arrows are unique. When people are going hunting, everybody will have their own, some people would call it decorations, their own mark on it, so they can identify their own arrows. So now that we have it, you can see it's got a little bit of a bend right here. So what would happen is we would heat this up in the fire until it's glowing. And then we'll get the wood, we'll put some water, just put some water on, and we'll run it right through, and it'll bend it. And once it's bent straight, then we'll put cold water on it, and it'll set that bend. If you notice, our Kumeyaay arrows are in 2 parts. The other part is the hardwood, and this is where we're going to put our pawi, and that's our arrowhead. And the arrow points, we make them out of various stones. This is obsidian, and this comes from Obsidian Butte out in Calipatria by the Salton Sea. This is one of the only obsidian deposits in Southern California. Now this main part right here, the main shaft, showed you we straightened it in the fire, and then the part out of hardwood, we'll put it in like this. And the reason why we have the arrow in 2 parts, when a person goes hunting and it hits an animal like a deer, we'll pull it out, or this will fall out. Person carries more of these than these, maybe carries 6 of these and about 20 of these. That way he makes a shot and picks it up and he can reload.
So to tie these artifacts together, we actually have the string made from plant fibers that the Kumeyaay people used for so many purposes. Acquired from agave leaves, the fibers would be twisted and formed together to make durable string. Everywhere from bows to shoes to baskets, this agave fiber string was essential for the Kumeyaay.
The way that we would make string for the bow, cleaning off the agave after we've prepared it, and then we start making the string. And I like to make my own string. That way I know what parts are strong, what parts are not, and if some part is not too strong, because, hunting, I mean, your livelihood depends on it, being able to, have the best gear possible, your bow and everything made. So I take my time when I do it. As we start making this cordage, what we're going to need to do real soon is we're going to need to add on. So I'm going to show you how to add on to this. What I'll do is I'll get some more. And one of the things I want to watch for when I'm making the string is uniformity. Don't want it to be bulging on one side and weak on the other. You always want one side longer than the other. That way you don't add both on at the same time. That usually makes a big bulge. So yeah, you don't want to bulge because it'll make it weaker on some of the sides. Also, when you're shooting an arrow, the string is off balance. So here's the cordage been added on. You always want to test for strength because you don't want this to break when you're shooting.
The difference between archaeology and ethnography is the fact that archaeology focuses on the study of the ancient and recent human past through material remains that have been left behind, while ethnography studies groups of living people and their culture by participant observation. Sometimes archaeological records may be difficult to interpret, and in such instances, consultation with the current occupants or those who occupied the locations in the past provides the most reliable way to identify such objects. Thanks for joining me today as we continue to preserve the Kumeyai's 10,000-year history. Catch you next time!